I'll keep an eye on the waiting room, I should say, for folks to continue joining us, but let's get started. Um, Thanks for being here. My name's Natalie Hennigan, and I'm on the board of Build Reuse. If you're familiar with Build Reuse, we're a national nonprofit organization dedicated to the recovery of building materials. But more than that, we're actually dedicated to the work of the individuals and that critical reuse and recovery work. So we're a membership-based nonprofit organization. We have individuals, organizations, businesses, local municipalities who are members of Build Reuse and get to take advantage of our networking opportunities and resources. We are, of all things, I think most about hosting our annual deconstruction and reuse conference. And after a virtual, we are returning to an in-person format next February in Savannah with our local host, Repurpose Savannah. I hope you out some of the resources that are going to be available at the conference, some of the speakers who are lined link in the chat so you can register as soon as you're done with this webinar. Early bird registration for the conference will end at the end of this year on December 31st. Do keep that in mind. We hope to see a number of you in Savannah. Talking it over to our speaker today, Andrew Ellsworth, who is the founder CEO of Doors Unhinged. Doors Unhinged is a company that reclaims and supplies doors, and you're going to hear all about their process and take a deep dive into starting a commercial reuse enterprise. I know Andrew has a lot of info to get to. Well, at the end, please don't hesitate to throw things in the chat. I'll keep an eye on everybody's thoughts and questions before the end of the hour. So with that, I'll let Andrew take it away. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Natalie. Can you all hear me okay? Anyone can give me a thumbs up? Okay, great. Natalie, you were a little laggy, and I don't know if that was me or you. And so if it's me, just let me know. I'll see what I can do, which is basically nothing. But yeah, at least I'll know. Okay, hi, everyone. Andrew Ellsworth, Doors Unhinged, based in Pittsburgh. I'm going to share, and then we're going to kind of dive in. Natalie, as the chat goes, if you see anything that's particularly concurrent to what we're talking about, I'm happy to be interrupted. If we can talk about it then. I won't be able to see the chat while I'm in presentation mode. It's not going to show up. So if there's things that are like, hey, I have a question on that, I would love to have that. Because I think that's part of the important part about this is to just talk about this and learn that way. So I'll share this presentation. I realized just before I started that I didn't actually put like a title that says like the name of the webinar or anything like that. Just sort of jumped in with Doors Unhinged. So here it is. Okay. Doors Unhinged. We're based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I started it over 5 years ago now with the goal of utilizing a lot of the high quality commercial materials going into the landfill. So this is what this looks like. Generally, we take materials, we'll call them kind of raw materials on the left-hand side, right? Things that we deconstructed, as you see on the top, or others did, as you can see a little less skillfully in the other photos. And then we take them back to our warehouse. And what we're doing is we're turning those into architectural products, which are on the right-hand side. And I want to make sure you understand that distinction between what's a material and what's an architectural product. The architectural product is something that actually matches the specific needs of that project, right? Function, regulatory compliance, aesthetics. It needs to have all those. Does it need glass? Does it, what size is it? What swing is it? That we got to sort all that out. And what you have on the left-hand side is not that, right? That's kind of an incomplete set of parts. So here's what we do. We sell wood slab doors. I'm sure you've seen these. They're in basically every commercial building, in office buildings, in medical offices, in hospitals, schools, all that. So wood slab doors, solid core, hollow metal slab doors, hollow metal frames, which you'll see on the bottom right. I don't know if you're familiar with what hollow metal frames look like. They're kind of usually a 3-piece component, or sometimes they're welded. but they're folded metal. They're not extruded, and hardware. So that's a sample of that on the top right. That's it. That is all we sell. We don't sell panel doors. We don't sell hollow core doors. We don't sell antique, vintage greenhouse doors, right? We don't do any of that. We don't sell aluminum and glass storefront doors, and I'll get to that a little bit later. We tried, but it didn't work out, and I can explain why. So fundamentally, we are a commercial door vendor. And there are a lot of companies out there like us in pretty much every region. That's where commercial doors come from in commercial projects, through these vendors who are selling doors, frames, and hardware. And they're getting them from all these different manufacturers, and they're integrating them all, and they're coordinating them, and they make sure they meet all the needs of the project, and they're delivering. So we had to make ourselves look like those companies so that we would be taken seriously. And we'll talk more about that. I'm going to flash some projects that we've done just to see like what it looks like on the other end. This is a university building that's part lab, part office space here in Pittsburgh. This is an office and kind of gallery for a local craftsman, local economy through artisan and craftsmanship. And they saw all these great locally made products, and we provided the door systems for their office. This is a co-working space here in Pittsburgh in an old roundhouse, which is a beautiful building, complete with gantry crane. I don't have stats on every image. We track a lot of them, but this is an example. We provided almost 50 openings to this project, and we avoided over 5 metric tons of carbon and diverted over 2 tons of waste, right? And that doesn't even get into the cost saving. Another project for Carnegie Mellon. This is a suite level space, a suite size space in a typical academic building, right? You have these different departments and they have small offices. And so this is one of those offices. This has been a great fit for us because it kind of fits the size of materials we have. We're not doing whole university buildings that are built from the ground up, but we can really tackle this kind of level. Thrilled that we got a project in New York with HSBC Bank in their US headquarters. We didn't get everything, but we got a slice of it. It was an amazing opportunity, a tremendous amount of work. It was only about 13 doors, but it was a lot of work and it was totally worth it. This is what it looks like for us to take doors, I'll say. So, you know, we were by far not the first people to take doors out of buildings, even commercial doors, but I think we perfected the process and we know how to move them, store them, handle them in a way such that they don't get damaged, right? Once you get damaged product, it's kind of worthless and you wasted your time. And from that perspective, we know what to leave behind too in the building. We know what's good, what's not. Don't waste your time on things that are either broken or things that are too weird to be able to sell. In the bottom right, this is, we can sure fill up a truck. This is a funny story. Actually, this was the first project that we took doors out of and learned the hard way how to load a truck. And it's not with a lift gate. This is our warehouse. And so this is one of our warehouses, I should say. We have one down the road from here. This is Inside Construction Junction in Pittsburgh, a tremendous partner of ours, and we're thrilled to have their support. So we have here probably 600 or 700 doors, and then in the other warehouse we have maybe 300 or so. We try to be as neat and clean as possible and organized so we know what we have and we know where it is. But it's also a workshop. You'll see in a lot of the same photos in the same area. We got to work on the doors. There's a certain amount of production that has to happen to, again, turn it from what it came in as to what it needs to go out as. In the bottom left, we're applying film to a door that had glass on it. They wanted that, and that's something we had to do. Installing hardware. This is an important thing for us because when we're selling salvaged hardware, we got to be absolutely certain that it works. I'm installing a panic bar in the bottom right picture. You can think of what could happen if the panic bar isn't working right when it goes out. So us installing the hardware is a QA, right? We're ensuring that everything goes out with all the screws in it. It's facing the right direction. There's nothing damaged or missing parts or anything like that. Sometimes we got to flip doors around and turn them upside down and all these things. And so that all happens in the shop. Why did we focus on doors? I don't probably have enough time to talk about the full origin story of Doors Unhinged. It's actually not that interesting, but it centers on the idea that we need to focus, right? We need, again, to look like what others look like in the commercial industry, which is specialized suppliers and subcontractors that are really good at their trade. We went through the process of identifying what options would be if we were going to choose a trade or product category, or however you want to look at it. And what we came up with was something that was valuable enough that we could make a margin on it by still doing all the work and putting it in a warehouse and not selling a bunch of the things we have on hand. Fairly standardized and kind of a kit of parts. We'll talk about that later. Like, how can the components be interchanged easily? Good shape, not structural. There's room for looking at structural. We just didn't think we could start there. There's a lot of hand-wringing and consternation when it comes to structure and envelope, thermal performance, right? Those things are a big deal, and we got to work a little bit harder for that. The other thing was, especially wood doors, almost always end up in the landfill. There was no competition for other people taking this material. Frankly, it was so easy to get material. Actually, it was too much coming in at one given time. So the other options at the time were, and it came up with this idea probably 2012, 2013, was one was lighting. And the problem was we were in a technology transition at that moment. And so going from fluorescent to LED, what you're going to end up with is people giving you a lot of fluorescent and everyone buying LED, which means they're not buying from you. So that was then. This is now. That may be a better opportunity to look at it. The other was casework, built-in cabinetry, high value, challenging to work with. And at the moment, I didn't think we were ready for that. So doors was the last option, and we thought we could make a pretty good play on it and figure out if there was something that happened here. Okay, what is the value prop? Which in essence is, why are we still in business 5 years later? So the basic, if you're going to sell reclaimed material, it's kind of hard to sell it at full value. You may be able to get that at some point for a few customers, or you know, maybe some distant future we can dream on that. But for now, we need to show significant savings for people to consider us. And so we offer what we say is kind of this blended rate of 30 to 50% less than new. Shorter lead times, that was a problem during the pandemic. It's kind of eased up, and as the economy has slowed a little bit, the manufacturers have caught up. They were pushing 20 weeks for doors, which is insane. That's like almost 6 months waiting for those materials, when you can see projects wanting to do a quick summer renovation, 3 months turnaround, and they were nowhere near. The environmental benefits, people are very interested in that. It's a combination of all these factors. Customer service, we're going to talk about that in a little bit as well. We have to provide the level of service that we're expecting, and frankly, I think we provide better service, which again makes us a more appealing option. Okay, looking at it an item by item, like let's actually dig into the cost of this. So to get a door frame and hardware out of a building, generally costs us between $5 and $20, maybe $25, and that accounts for labor and transportation, pretty much. On rare occasions, we've actually purchased doors, and typically we're not going to pay more than that. And so it takes a few of us a few hours to, I mean, we can clear 50 doors in half a day out of a building. goes pretty fast if you know what you're doing. So that's kind of our cost in. There's obviously storage and handling and things like that. But if we're selling new, and again, this is important about the margins, right? A new unit, door frame and hardware, minimum is maybe around 600, 650, and then 1,000 and beyond. It's possible to get much higher than that. And so when we're selling for 30 to 50% of that, we're in the 450 to 600 range, 400, 700. It depends on a lot of factors. So there's work to do. You saw us handling them, and we got to flip them around and make sure they're the right ones. And so, okay, there's another cost, $100 to do all that work. That's several hours of labor. There's our profit, right? Per opening, we're at 75, 85% profit. Think that a typical supplier of materials like this is looking at 20, 25%. And so the unit economics are awesome, right? This is why we're still in business. Our challenge is volume, in that I have 1,000 doors sitting in our warehouse, some of which that have been there for years, right? So if we can get volume up, we can add our employees, the whole system moves faster. We can practically print money, right? That's how I see it. You would need to be convinced of that as well. But listen, that's why it's important to have the high value, because if your volume is low, then you got to make money somewhere. You can't have low margin and low volume. You can't stay in business doing that. So someday, low margin, high volume, like really high volume, we could probably pull that off, but not right now, not until the market kind of comes around to this. Okay, really important thing to understand is the differences between residential and commercial, and why you should be one and not the other. I was on the board of Construction Junction, which is a great reuse center here in Pittsburgh. And so very familiar with the materials they get and the quality and things like that. A lot of like the doors and stuff that would come through there, no one would ever put that into a commercial office, right? The stuff that's there is either paneled, or if it's not paneled, it's super light duty and it's lightweight and it might be damaged in one way or another. Commercial stuff is going to be really heavy duty. It's expensive. And that's why, right? It's built well, it's built to last. Think of a school, like materials that have to like put up with the abuse from students and all that. We are strictly wholesale, and we work B2B. We don't do e-commerce. We don't do storefront retail. That's sort of the nature of the industry. Like, we're just responding to the industry. Like, contractors are not ordering their products online. They might have some little bits here and there, some like nails or screws that are specialized, but they're not buying a whole package of doors or flooring or ceilings or drywall from some online seller. They go to their suppliers that they've worked with year after year and project after project. Commercial is all about large quantities and them all being the same. And that's really different than what you see in the reuse market and residential, right? Uniqueness, small quantities, really specialized. Oh, it's like a treasure. It's a find. That's not how the commercial market works. We have to provide really significant service, and I'll dig into that a little more later. And I think in a transaction, even if it's a Home Depot or if it's a reuse center, just a standard, register work is fine. The advantage of that is you get your sale fast, right? They come up, they buy it, they leave, you got your money. Our pipeline is actually much longer. And so we often have to like deliver materials, and then we're waiting for 30 to 45 days. Depending on credit and things like that. The pipeline can be long in getting projects into it as well. Also, we have to kind of support the project when it's done, and that's part of the expectation. Warranty is a given, right? It's really, if you're not going to offer a warranty, everyone's going to start asking why. And do you not think your materials are good enough? Or, are you going to be in business when it comes time? So be prepared for that. Okay. The other thing about the differences is, and this kind of gets to the point about service. The residential market is really just about the product. Any person can go into Home Depot or whatever and pick out a material and take it home with them and probably get it installed, right? It's not how the commercial sector works. The way it works, you're selling both product, but you're selling a whole set of wraparound services with it. When you are bidding on a project, a general contract will essentially dump a set of documents on you and say, here, go through this and tell me what I need, how much it's going to cost, how long is it going to take? Do you have any questions about this that I can pass on to the architect? They know far less about what they're asking you to buy than you do, right? You have to be the expert and you have to tell them what they need. And that's the expectation, right? You see in this list here, right? Takeoffs. I don't know if you've ever heard that term. It means you look through the drawings and you're going to count however many of this and that in each thing they're going to be. You're going to turn that into an estimate. When it comes time, if you actually get the project and your proposal is accepted, you have to send in what are called submittals. And submittals are a document that's the estimate is kind of is vague to an extent. It doesn't talk about finish. It doesn't talk about the exact details of hardware and stuff like that. That's what happens in the process in between when you get the project and when you deliver the materials. You send in these documents that are very precise about what exactly you're providing. It gets reviewed, marked up, sent back as either approved, make changes, resubmit, whatever. You have to come back around and make sure what you're providing is exactly what they are expecting. Sometimes there are deviations, there are changes that happen all the time. You have to stay on top of this, right? You're probably going to have to deliver the products. They're not going to come pick them up. You have to deliver them exactly when they need them, not when it's convenient for you. It's when it's convenient for them. Sometimes you would have to do installation based on your specific trade, right? If you like some are what's called furnish and install, you're going to provide the material and install it. We have to be often furnish only for union projects, at least. We just deliver the product and someone else is going to install it. We have done installation. You're going to spend time in the field, which is in the buildings under construction. You may have to make service calls and you definitely have to provide warranties. So I would argue there's a couple key objectives that you have to accomplish. I kind of said this at the beginning. All right, number one, you got to make your product look like what your customers have asked for. And the customers ask for things through the drawings and through the specifications. Okay. And so that's a little bit of a challenge for us. We rarely have exactly what's shown on the drawings to a T. It's happened. It's easier on smaller projects than it is larger projects. But there's more to it than that. It's not about what exactly the products look like. It's like the whole experience, right? And that kind of gets into point number two. You've proved that your products are equal, hopefully. How are they actually going to go through and do the purchase from you? How are they going to agree to buy from you? And so those are the sort of the top line questions. Down below, I want to make sure you don't spend too much effort on this, but you got to be able to find the material. You got to know what you're doing with it. You got to be able to find it, get it, store it, move it around, turn it into whatever it is. Okay. If you only focus on that though, you will perish because the material will come in so fast that all you'll be doing is moving around material and you don't have a plan to sell it. So that's in the back of your mind. You got to know how to do that, but you can't spend your effort on that because supply does not equal demand. So, but to accomplish these first two objectives, what we really need to understand is who is your customer? The customer is not what you might expect if you work in reuse retail. That's at your counter, right? The person that walked up with the thing that they want to buy and they want you to ring it up. It's not that. It's way more complicated than that. It's actually what you would consider a committee. Okay, so this is sort of actually the small version of it. These are the key players, right? The developer, the owner, is the one that actually owns the building, right? They're ultimately writing the check for this. There's another player, which is the bank, which is often underwriting the owner or the developer. there are people occupying that may or may not have a stake in what's going on the specific project. The architects and engineers are the ones that are actually making the plans based on what the owners want and the tenants are asking for, and what can be what's feasible, what can be afforded, things like that. If in case you don't know, the engineers work for the architects. The architects are like the conductors. They're hiring the structural engineers, the civil engineers, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers, telco. They might have an acoustic consultant. All those feed through the architect, right? They're the puppet master, they're the conductor. Okay. So they may not be the expert in everything, but they need to at least know everything that's going on. The general contractor is going to be actually building the building. Someone's building it. There's different structures for it. So this is one structure. You often have subcontractors that work for the general contractor in a specific trade. And usually occasionally they have a couple trades that they'll do, but often you have a plumber, you have a mechanical engineer, a mechanical contractor, an electrical contractor, fire protection. And then typically what's subbed out in more standard materials is like concrete, flooring, framing sometimes, casework and millwork. It depends, right? It depends on the scale of the project and what they want to sub out. There are other arrangements where you have a construction manager and then you have a bunch of essentially, it's called subcontractors, but some might take what's called the whole general trades package, and they're called a prime. We won't get into that though. So there's these other people on the side, right? You have the construction manager, and then you have what some people have as an owner's representative, which works directly for the owner and helps to manage the relationships and the process with the architects and with the contractor, because it takes a lot of expertise to know how to manage those people so you get what you want out of it and the process doesn't just kind of go off on its own. So the developer is going to hire the architect to make decisions. So in that case, you don't exactly want to go right to the owner, because they say, you know, if you're just dealing with this material, I hired an architect, talk to my architect. The architect is making decisions on how the whole building's coming together. And again, they hire engineers to do whatever they need to do. They're a major influencer. The general contractor is going to basically respond to everything, and their contract is to deliver that building based on the drawings for a fixed amount of money, or there's different arrangements like GMP, can't remember, guaranteed maximum price, with has like profit margin and stuff like that, but we won't get involved in that. If you are a supplier or sub, you're probably going to have your general contractor will hold your contract. So they're writing you a check, you're essentially selling to them, and their customer is the owner. So the architect is a major decision maker, but they are not, the money doesn't pass through them, and they don't carry a credit card, which means they're not actually buying the materials from you, but they're making decisions on what the materials will be. There's kind of this, like the submittals are this process that materials have to go through all these levels of approval. And a lot of people can say things. The general contractor can veto things. Certain subcontractors, if you go through a subcontractor, they could veto it. There's a lot of like kind of hands in the pot. And so there isn't exactly one customer. There's kind of this committee. So you got to know how to work with the different people of the committee and understand what they care about and what makes them tick. Don't have time to get into exactly that part of it, but that's like a little teaser about hopefully something we'll talk about in a future event. So getting back to the objectives. Okay, how do you make your product look like what your customer is asking for? There's two sides to this. One, you can try and get your products to look like what they're asking for. Hopefully you'll have ways to do that. And that's kind of the last bullet here, how you process alter your products. We do all this stuff, right? Touch up, fill up, cut, paint, length, shorten, like we got to do lots of things to these sometimes. I call them hacks, right? This really is what it is. It's like, it's not trickery, right? We're just adapting the materials to meet the needs of the project. literally one of the things that we sometimes do is we flip a door upside down. And that works on certain times, but it doesn't work on others. So if I have a right-hand door, but it's of a certain size, if I flip it upside down, I can turn it into a left-hand door. That's helpful at times. And lots of things like that. So that's kind of part one, is like figuring out what all your hacks are. But the other side of it is engaging with mostly the architect to get their spec to look like what you have. There's an art to that, as you can probably imagine. It's you're trying to convince them to buy a product that's better for you, right? But you have to convince them it's better for them as well. And so the time to do that, see if I'm going to jump ahead a couple slides and then come back. The time to do that is not when the general contractor has the documents out to bid, because basically those documents are done, right? That's where it says bidding award general contractor, right? Those documents are out on the street and lots of people are bidding on them. So you can't start making changes at that point. You can make small changes, you can't make big changes. You got to get involved early on. And so you got to start working with the architect. You got to start planting the seeds. You float some ideas of what some materials might be based on their project. Most importantly, you have to know about the project to be able to get involved. Who are you calling, right? What is the project? When is it going to happen? And from there, like that's all about the relationships. And so let me jump back here. That's going to be challenge number one. Challenge number two is like, how do you get people to buy from you? This industry is built on relationships, at least where we are. And the reason for that is people, it's actually a lot of work and it's a lot of friction to constantly find new suppliers, new subcontractors, even new architects. So people tend to go back to the same partners over and over again if they've done a good job. They're happy with the results. They showed up, they delivered good materials, the pricing was reasonable. People would rather work with the same people than save 5% generally, or 3%. You know, it's that much worth it to them. That's why our pricing has to be a lot lower so we can actually get that attention. So if you're going to kind of like elbow out of the way the other people that usually do that work, and they're probably 3 to 5 of any given trade in your region, maybe more, you have to look like them in a lot of ways. And so you got to have all the expertise on the product. You can't try and dump it back on them because they're going to say, you don't even understand this. I'll go find someone who can, because frankly, you need to understand it better than they do, because they're looking to you to guide them. They again, general contractors are like conductors too. They have all these people, they have a lot of knowledge, but they can't get into the weeds on every single thing. That's why they hire subs, right? That's all part of the service. You got to give them all the service, all those things I listed, and in some cases more. You got to show up to job meetings sometimes. You got to do walkthroughs. You may be responsible to help problem solve. There's a conflict or a challenge or something that's come up that's not working. You may need to be involved. And sometimes if you can get ahead of those and show them there's a problem and give them a solution, they love that. And that all gets towards like it being faster, cheaper, and easier to do the project that they have kind of laid out there. This is a key point that I think is another thing that allows us to do our work. We aim to deliver, ideally we should deliver 100% of the materials in a given scope, right? Of the door scope, reclaimed. That happens sometimes, but more often than not, we got to buy some things. And there's two options for that. You can have the contractor, whoever, go buy them directly, go buy those additional products directly, or you can do it yourself. The downside is they don't like to have multiple contracts, and they don't want to sit there identifying the scopes as where does yours start, where does mine end? Like, they hate that. So the smoother, easier option for them is if you buy it and you make sure it's all integrated and you provide a warranty on all of it, and you're going to can guarantee that everything works and fits and comes together in the field. right? So to do that, you got to find suppliers to sell you the stuff to sell to them that you're not providing, which is probably going to be your competitors. Weird, right? There are probably 4 other door businesses, door suppliers in Pittsburgh. We work with maybe 5. There's 5. We work with 4 of them. We buy from them. That doesn't mean we're cool on every single project. It's kind of a frenemies relationship, which is fine, but we know where we can work together and we know where we can't. At the end of the day, I thought when I started that they would try and lock me out. They're like, we don't want you what you do. We're not going to sell to you. And they were kind of like, hey, if you're going to pay me money, sure, I have these materials. I might as well sell them to you. So, but you still got to establish those relationships and nurture them, because like, these aren't, again, places you can walk in and like shop in a store. You have to like know what you're talking about and know what to ask for. They don't exactly want to waste their time educating you on the products. One of the other things that you're going to experience is they're feeling out your capability of actually doing what you say you could do. How, are you credible? Are you for real? Is this actually possible? And we experienced a lot of that early on. By now we've done 200 some projects. And so people don't question our capability of doing it. It's more about like, do they want the products that we have to offer? Or, some other, again, are they going to go back to their existing relationship? There's a whole handful of reasons why we don't get projects we're interested in. I would say more than anything, what you all would need to do is to de-risk the process. Right? How do you make it as like low risk as possible for them to work with you, at least to start? Because that's the first thing, right? If you're different, they'll be like, I don't know, this is different, this is weird, I don't think we should do it. Let's just do it the same way we've always done it, because that worked. So these are some ways to deal with it, right? Like give them a showcase, like this is the product I'm going to show you, I'm going to sell you, look at it. Here it is, and here's the one you bought new. Aren't they basically the same? You got to start small. And so start with projects where you say, listen, if you don't like them, I'll buy you new ones. That's you taking the risk of them. That's you believing in your product, that you're giving them a good out. You got to manage their expectations of exactly what they're going to get. And that's good in the submittals, even in the proposals. If you get down the road through the proposal and you're too vague, and they're like, whoa, I thought we were getting new here. You got to be upfront about a lot of that stuff. Okay. Talking about like how you get product and deal with product. You will need product to really start selling. If you have nothing, it's pretty hard to sell a concept, that's abstract. They'll be like, well, I could get this product if you bought it. Don't do that. Have some amount of inventory, because it helps you learn about the project. About the product, that you've handled it, you've moved it, you've looked at it, you've broken it. You know what happens, what has to happen to break it. What are the differences between this one over here and that one over there, or an old one or a new one or whatever. That's really useful information. But remember, treat it as like a pilot, right? You're going to need a minimum amount of inventory to be able to service a project. You're not going to have the exact amount that they have. You have to have more things for them to choose from. Assurance that they have enough, that you have enough to meet their needs. But at the same time, I've said this before and I will continue to say, don't focus too heavily on getting inventory, because again, I say this as if you guys are starting these businesses, and I hope you are. And that's how I'm kind of presenting it. But so take that as you will. So those things are the easy. It's difficult to start this business. And if you are presented with different work that you have to do, it's easy to gravitate toward that. People call you. Hey, I heard you take so-and-so. Is that right? Could you come meet me? I have like so much of that. I'd love to give it to you. Right? You can really get down that rabbit hole, which is good in some ways as a way of building relationships, but it's also likely to kind of saddle you with more material than you want. On that note, don't take stuff that you don't think you can sell. Don't take crap just because someone's giving it away. And don't take stuff that's really weird and really unique. We did early on, and it was a mistake. I ended up having to give it away, donate it, throw it away, whatever. It just is what it is. You got to focus on the standard products. We talked about this. That's good. Okay. Now what you've probably been waiting for, like, what are the items we should look at? I don't know if you can figure out what this means. The solid circle is basically how any given product on the left-hand side is kind of measuring in that category, right? The solid is good, which means like it does well in that category. The kind of the half circle, like half filled circle is okay, and the hollow circle is not good. So there's lots of products in buildings, but you need to find things that I would say meet these criteria. There are more criteria to this, but this is kind of a basic. I threw drywall at the bottom really as a comparison. And I almost might start there. Why not to do drywall, right? By the way, I don't know if you know, a new sheet of drywall is about 15 to 20 bucks. It's not worth that much. So it takes a lot of effort to get drywall out. It's already been cut for sure. It's got screw holes in it. And who the hell is going to buy it, right? And what are they going to pay for it? $5 to do a whole bunch more work? Maybe someday, somewhere, someone's going to want that, but it's not right away. So the flip side of that is like, what is good then? Again, I emphasize value. I put things on here that are mostly high value. Standardization really helps. Some things are kind of partly standardized and end up being partially custom. Kit of parts is always great because it makes things interchangeable. You want something that is not super niche. If it's too niche, you're going to have a hard time finding customers, because remember, if here's the universe of customers and projects, you're already going to be about this big. And so if your niche is this big, right, that's the number of projects, then you're just so small, right? So be careful of niche products. I think we should be looking at carbon as what's the impact here? Like, why are we doing this? Carbon wasn't our number one when we started. What embodied carbon was not really like talked about a lot in 2018 and even before. So structural steel, to me, is at the top of the list right now. It's super difficult, but it's super impactful. It's really expensive stuff. If you can do this well, it's quite a lift to get it done. They're doing it. There's some places in Europe that are doing it. I think you would kill it. So the ultimate question is, how are you going to make money? And I don't know the answer to these other ones. Someone needs to figure that out. But I can tell you with doors, we're doing all right now. We could do better. I wish we were doing better. And I mentioned that's kind of the nature of what we're dealing with now. I also want to throw out there the tendency to try and pick things out of a system. Assemblies, systems, right? If you see this door here, this is a system, right? Remember the components I said? Door, frame, hardware. They all work together, right? People don't want to buy just one or the other, right? They don't just want the frame. They don't just want the hardware. So technically you could sell individual components, but you're selling to someone else, not the customer who's at the end of the project, who's going to pay full price, right? You're selling to some wholesaler who's going to want to work you way down. As I mentioned, we tried to sell storefront doors, aluminum glass doors, but we were only trying to sell one piece of this system. We didn't want to sell like all the aluminum framing and all the glass of these big window walls. We didn't want to do that, but you have to do that because that door is integral to that system and you can't sell it separately. If you sold car engines, right? You're not going to sell to someone who needs a car because they need a car, not an engine, right? You're going to sell to someone who's making cars using engines, and you're not going to get as much money as like the value of a new car or whatever, you know, it's like, you got to think of the whole system. I'll show this in terms of doors, right? If you looked at what these prices are of individual items new, you say, boom, you should just sell the hardware. See that box of hardware on the bottom right? That box is $5,000 worth of hardware new. Okay. That door is $400 each. So you can imagine what 15 of those doors is a gigantic pallet, and it's still less than that hardware, right? Great opportunity there, but how are you really going to sell it without the system? Who are you selling it to, right? You can sell one a month on eBay if you want, you know, or you're going to get a really deep cut on that. So you got to understand what the system is, and you're probably going to have to sell the whole system. Okay. How do you get started? Start looking at materials. Figure out which ones are a good fit. You got to start finding customers too at the same time. And so don't start presenting a specific material, but you want to start having conversations about it. What products would they buy? There's some data, we've done some surveying on this and we know a little bit about this, but you should figure it out for yourself. How much are you up against? What are you up against? What is one of those items cost new? You got to know that, because you need to know what your price point is going to be, and then how much it costs for you to do all the things to get it to a sale. Again, we talked about systems. Is it going to be part of a system? Can you make money at the end of the day based on your product? Are you going to be able to have this consistent supply of it? Because again, niche things can be harder to find. How do you handle it? How do you store it? Are there issues on that? And again, who's already doing this? Right? Who are you going to be your partners? Who are you going to be your competitors? You got to know the product. There's no, like, if you walk in and you don't know what you're talking about and you act like you do and they know better than you, then you will not be taken seriously. So you got to learn, and you got to work with a product. As I said, like deconstructing it is a great way to learn, but then there's trainings. You can find trainings online from manufacturers who want to have their suppliers educated on their stuff, right? And, you know, future suppliers, and trade groups also do it as well. There's a Door Hardware Institute has a training that was like $200, right? And that with that same license, I've had my employees do that as well. Then you got to find a customer. And this is what we talked about. You got to find a super fan, and you got to de-risk it. The way you're going to do it is just to start networking, and you got to go to trade events. I think are actually probably the best place to do that. Cold calling, people are usually busy and they're not ready to talk. You can do some of it. You can learn a little bit, but you can mostly get shut down. Over time, your name will get known, and you call again and like, oh yeah, we know who you are. We've heard of you. Oh yeah, we have this project. Yeah. Try and get individual meetings, you know, see if someone likes it enough. Maybe they're not your first customer, but you can still learn from them. And again, you got to have some inventory available to show that you're capable of executing on a sale. So I'm going to throw out some pieces of advice. I don't know if we'll get through all this. I do want to get to questions. Again, just because there's a lot of materials out there is no guarantee that someone's going to buy them from you. Again, there's a ton of drywall out there, right? More drywall than you could ever do anything with, right? It doesn't mean anyone's buying it, right? We mix supply and demand up. Aesthetics in this market are really, really important. Other things are important too, but what we find is we lose most often on aesthetics. And so if you have a finished product, you need to be ready to have being held to exacting standards. You need to basically look at it. And that's tricky. Things that are in the wall, people are not going to care about. Things that are hidden above ceiling in wall, things like that in basements, not so much of an issue. I find people don't really like shabby chic. There may have been a phase there, you know, most projects are not going to do that. If you're banking on that, then you're going to have a really, really small group of projects you could sell to. Again, don't sell product before you have it, because something's going to go wrong. You don't get it. They forget to call you. It gets damaged. They decided to keep it for themselves. There's tons of reasons why that could happen. People have this magical belief that you can move products immediately from one site to another. That is a fairy tale. And we can talk more about that later. You got to call people, and what you'll learn is when to call people. When is the right time to call people? Because more often than not, if you don't know when you're calling, you're like, oh, they're building this building. I see this sign. Too late, right? Everything's already been awarded. Everything's done, right? So you got to learn when to call them, because they're generally not going to call you. And that's what sales is, right? You got to like call those people over and over again to see if they have projects. Don't be a dumping ground. It's easy to want to do that, to be nice and like to build relationships. You can do a little bit of it, but like be really careful. It also creates a bad precedent, because they're going to keep coming back to you with more crappy stuff. It's good to reach, but don't overreach. You know, you got to like work within your limits of being able to deliver what you say you're going to do. The failure to do that, it means that you're a disappointment, and they're never going to work with you again, and your reputation will be tarnished before you even really start. People are going to try and sell you all kinds of services that see bid sites, you know, and we know all these projects, intelligence, and like we can connect you with bidders. Waste of money, because they're trying to substitute for relationships, and there is no substitute for relationships, right? I get hundreds of bid invites a month that people don't know what we do. We're just on some lists. I know they're not interested in what we do. And you got to go back and build those relationships if that's what you're counting on. You're going to have to be a little bit scrappy and figure out where to make money, because it'll be lean to start. And so whether you're working a night job, or whether you have another income stream, whether it's consulting or whatever, don't let it be a distraction, because you need to focus on it. But you're going to need some cash. I'm going to wrap up just with one of my favorite quotes from Buckminster Fuller, that can't fight the existing reality. You have to create the new paradigm, right? And then the old paradigm will be obsolete. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And we're trying to build a whole ecosystem of companies like ours that hopefully you'll be a part of. And then we can all work together, and we can make circularity and reuse of building materials a legitimate thing. So get started. Don't wait. Stop here, take questions. Natalie?
Yay, thank you, Andrew, so much. If I'm still glitchy, let me know. I'm sorry about that, but I will share a couple questions. I know there's quite a few actually. So a couple that were similar. Annika asked, what is the initial investment for starting this sort of specialized reuse operation? What kinds of costs would a new operation incur, like physical space, workforce development, et cetera?
I would say the physical space is going to be the biggest, followed probably by material handling. Our first warehouse, we did not have a forklift. We sort of had access to okay. Our very first warehouse was a self-storage unit. Okay. Because we didn't have a warehouse before we had material, right? So we had a self-storage unit for maybe 2 months. Then we had another warehouse in the back of some food distributor, right? We didn't have a forklift, but they had a forklift that we like occasionally they could help us with. We moved to another warehouse that we did not own the forklift, but there was one in that building we could use. That got sold, and eventually we bought our own forklift. And so that was a big investment. That's like $5,000 to $10,000. Before long, you're going to need that. If your space ends up being precious, which it probably is, you're going to need to go vertically, and you really can't do that without a forklift. So I wouldn't say don't invest in space first, right? The self-storage is a great option. It's a little bit of a premium to do it month by month, but it's seriously a way to get started. You can get stuff in there before you start figuring it out. You're gonna need, workforce development, I would say you're gonna start with probably some maybe, friends and fools, right? Friends, family, and fools to help you a little bit move stuff. You might find some laborers, some temporary laborers, some college kids, whatever it is, to sort of like fill the gap. I wouldn't invest early on in salaried employees. I think that will be a tremendous strain. Those I would say are actually the biggest expenses. Get an email account, maybe get a simple website. You can do those pretty much on the cheap to start. And that's kind of where we started, right? You're going to need pallets and straps and like a pickup truck. I didn't even have a pickup truck when I started. I was stuffing stuff into this like hatchback sedan. But you work with what you got and be frugal. Buy tools, but don't overbuy. Buy things as you need them. Look at them as investments. I would say buy good quality tools because it does make a difference. But I hope I didn't talk that one to death.
Well, that's great. You did say you don't do historic vintage doors, but Brad asks, what's the most you have ever had to do or will do to a door for its refurbishment?
We've done a lot. The HSBC project, we had a lot to do to every door. We had to shorten the door and then and therefore reinforce it. You actually, for odd reasons, where the hardware was located, we had to cut the top and the bottom and then reinforce those by routing them out. We had to fill the hinges and re-prep the hinges. We had to sand them. We've done a lot of work on them. It was a tremendous amount of work. We try to not do that. And again, that's sort of matching the materials we have to what the customer is asking for. And so there are a lot of things you can do. The idea is you do as little as possible.
Well, Max asked about the cost of acquiring materials. Can you clarify the difference between the $25 cost to acquire materials and the $100 handling and labor? Does the latter include the former?
No. So $25 is $5 to $25 is really the cost of going into a building, getting the materials and taking them. That's for us, right? Doors come out really fast. Like unscrew it, take the hardware off. If you're taking the frame, that can take a few minutes. That $100 is really about the work that you're going to have to do to sell it again, right? So if you don't have, you still have cost of goods sold, so to speak, but it was you going to get the door and then you doing something to the door, and those are your costs going into your product. Don't overlook those because there's cost to it, right? Don't act like it's free because you're going to end up like getting your model wrong, right, and your pricing wrong. But that's what that $100 is about. That's pure ballpark. I mean,
Brad also asked, is there anything unique about Pittsburgh that helps this unique business?
Cheaper real estate. I would say we had an easier time finding cheaper warehousing space here. There's, I would say it was a little bit lower risk in some ways. People are frugal here, which means like they're happy to give stuff away because they want stuff to be like diverted. Even like contractors and salt of the earth, like laborers, they like the idea of what we did. But the frugality kind of was a double-edged sword because like some buildings actually save doors themselves, which was surprising to me. And they don't really do that in other regions. And others is like, they reuse those same doors in their fit outs and they're like, we don't need you. We'll just use these ones we've been sitting around. But yet they seem weirded out on another project that they would buy reclaimed doors, right? Despite them having used the ones from their very own building before. So is there something unique to Pittsburgh? Maybe. I think like real estate is a big variable in this. And so finding a market that, like San Francisco, probably pretty hard. New York, kind of hard, where you got to go really far out to get affordable warehouse space. So I'm hoping government can kind of like bridge that and help to bring those costs down.
I know it is 4 o'clock, but we have 2 more short questions if I'm seeing it correctly. Margot asked, what's your closing percentage on bids versus jobs completed?
Let's see. I just looked. We put out probably 45 bids this year. I mean, some of them like we may or may not get awarded next year. I would say it's probably 20 to 30%. I like to stretch and I like to people tell us, hey, could we get involved in this? And they're like, I don't know. And so I send them a bid anyway. And so it's kind of a little bit pushy and you just got to get in front of them because sometimes you'll capture their attention. Early on, it was maybe 5%, 10%. I was bidding on stuff that was later I've realized it was stupid for me to bid on. There's no chance we can get that project. But we tried, and you actually learn a lot just going through the bidding process too. So
And then Ariana asked, what do you recommend for inventory software organization?
To start, Excel. There's more complex systems. I think you would need to decide you don't overinvest in something like that early, because I think you will regret it. There are a lot of different inventory systems out there. We are turned into one called Clearly right now, which looks pretty good. Low cost. But you gotta understand your product and your process before you build that system, because you'll put a lot of time into that, and more than anything, getting the materials inventoried and then making sure you're adding and deducting from inventory. Otherwise, it becomes worthless. So I would say that's a second or third stage kind of investment.
Cool. Well, I think I grabbed all of the questions from the chat. Thank you so much. There are some very nice comments here, Andrew. So thank you so much for your time and your expertise. Really, really wonderful.
I'm just going to give just one pitch. At the Build Reuse conference, we're going to do a session similar to that, but I think we're going to do a little more workshopping, because we're in person. We're actually going to take a business and hopefully sort of a concept and run it through the paces and see if we can do that collaboratively. And it may just mix up the content just to make it different and more interesting. So I can't answer that, Ariana. You answer that, Natalie. So
awesome. Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much. I'm available to talk further if anyone wants to email me. But appreciate people's interest, and I'm serious. I want you guys to try this. Let's do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Really, really appreciate it. Hope to see you at the conference.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.